15 hours. That's how long the word peace lasted. On Thursday evening, February 27th, Oman's foreign minister told the world that a breakthrough had been reached in nuclear talks with Iran. He said Iran had agreed to never stockpile enriched uranium and to full international verification. Peace, he said, was within reach. 15 hours later, Tehran was on fire. At 9:27 a.m. local time on February 28, 2026, explosions tore through central Tehran, including the compound of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. 30 bombs on one building. 7 confirmed missiles hit the district containing his residence, the presidential palace, and the National Security Council. Within minutes, satellite images showed the compound reduced to smoldering rubble. Israel had launched roughly 200 fighter jets, the largest air operation in its history. The United States followed with cruise missiles from carrier groups in the Persian Gulf. Combined, they hit approximately 500 targets across at least 28 regions in Iran. President Trump called it major combat operations. The Pentagon called it Operation Epic Fury. Israel called it Operation Roaring Lion. Iran called it an act of war and started firing back. Within hours, the IRGC, Iran's Revolutionary Guard, launched over 150 ballistic missiles at Israel. Air raid sirens screamed across the country. Millions ran for shelters. At least 89 people were injured. But Iran didn't stop at Israel. Missiles hit U.S. military bases in Bahrain, in Qatar, in the UAE, in Kuwait, in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, in Iraq. A residential tower in Bahrain called the Breaker caught fire. A drone struck a densely populated neighborhood near Dubai's Palm Jeremiah. One person was killed in Abu Dhabi. Smoke columns rose over Doha. And then came the announcement that spooked the entire global economy. Iran's Revolutionary Guard declared the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway where 20% of the world's oil passes through every single day, not safe for passage. Oil tankers started making U-turns. Dubai International Airport, the biggest international airport on Earth, shut down indefinitely. Over 14,000 flights were canceled across the Middle East. In Tehran's supermarkets, bread, eggs, and water disappeared from shelves. But here's the part nobody expected. As bombs fell on IRGC bases and regime compounds, Iranians inside of Iran, during an active bombing campaign, started celebrating. Videos posted through the near-total internet blackout showed people laughing in the streets of Tehran. Women chanting death to Khamenei from apartment windows. Students at a girls' school in Tehran chanting death to the Velayt, meaning death to the system of clerical rule itself. And then, late Saturday afternoon, Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu went on camera and said something that may have just changed the trajectory of an entire nation. He said, "We have destroyed Khamenei's compound. We have killed Revolutionary Guard commanders and senior nuclear officials." Then he paused. And there are many signs that Khamenei himself is no longer with us. Hours later, Axios reported that Israel's ambassador to Washington officially told U.S. officials Khamenei is dead. Israel Channel 12 said Netanyahu had been shown an image of the body recovered from the rubble of his compound. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, told NBC, "As far as I know, Khamenei is still alive." But he also admitted Iran had lost a few commanders, including the defense minister and Revolutionary Guard generals. As of today, while filming this at 2:17 p.m. Central Time on February 28, 2026, there's no audio, no video, no proof of life, just a regime promising a recording is coming soon, and an 86-year-old supreme leader who has been nicknamed Mushali Ratali by his own people for months because of how often he hides underground. This is a story of how we got here, what's actually happening, what both sides are saying, and where this goes next. Let's slow down and walk through what actually happened on February 28, 2026. The strikes began just after sunrise in Iran, Saturday morning, which matters because Saturday is a working day there, the first day of the Iranian week. Millions of people were commuting to work. Kids were walking into school. Israel Defense Minister Israel Katz declared it a preemptive attack and issued an immediate state of emergency. The Israeli Air Force confirmed 200 jets hit roughly 500 military targets in western and central Iran. Air defenses, missile launches, IRGC aerospace facilities. It was the largest strike sortie in Israeli Air Force history. But here's where it gets complicated and ugly. The targets in Tehran also include the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Intelligence, the Atomic Energy Headquarters, Khamenei's residential compound, the Judiciary Building, the Presidential Building. These are not isolated military facilities in the desert. These are in the middle of a city of 9 million people. Israel specifically targeted 30 senior leaders in the opening salvo, a decapitation strategy. Reports confirmed Iran's defense minister and several IRGC generals were killed. A member of Tehran's city council said Khamenei's son-in-law and daughter-in-law were both killed. His son, Moshtaba, widely discussed as a possible successor, is believed to have survived. On the American side, the U.S. component hit missile sites, air defense systems, command and control centers, the IRGC intelligence headquarters. Officials said U.S. strikes were more focused on military infrastructure, while Israel went after the regime itself. The human toll, as reported by Iranian state media, 201 killed, 747 wounded. Strikes hit across 24 of Iran's 31 provinces. And then there's Minab. In the southern port of Minab, a strike hit near a girls' school. 85 students were killed. Iran's state news agency, IRNA, reported the number. The city prosecutor confirmed it. 85 girls in a school on Saturday morning. The school is reportedly near a military base, which raises the question every conflict raises. When military targets sit inside cities of millions, who bears responsibility for civilian deaths? There's no clean answer. There never is. What is clear is that the Minab school bombing will be the image this war is remembered by. For millions of Iranians, for the regime's propaganda machine. And for 85 families, it's not an image, it's everything. Iran hit back fast. The IRGC launched over 150 ballistic missiles at Israel throughout the day, but in small, spaced-out salvos, not a single massive barrage. Military analysts said Iran was distributing its attacks across multiple countries and managing its stockpiles, assuming this fight would be a long one. Israeli air defenses intercepted most of them. The ballistic missile did strike the Hasharon area north of Tel Aviv Saturday evening, but overall, 89 people in Israel were lightly injured, mostly from shrapnel and running to shelters. No Israeli deaths reported. But the retaliation against Gulf states, that was new. Iran fired at U.S. Navy bases in 7 countries, Bahrain's 5th Fleet headquarters, Qatar's Al Udeid Air Base, the largest American military facility in the Middle East, the Al Dhafra base in the UAE, bases in Kuwait, Jordan, Iraq. In Bahrain, the Breaker residential tower caught fire, likely from a drone strike or falling interceptor debris. In Dubai, an Iranian drone hit a residential neighborhood near the Palm Jeremiah. Here's the thing, Qatar, the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan are not parties to this war. They host American bases, sure, but having a foreign country bomb your luxury hotels and residential towers because you happen to lease an airfield is not a great sales pitch for Iran. Saudi Arabia immediately condemned what it called brutal Iranian aggression and warned of dire consequences. The UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain all condemned the attacks and temporarily closed their airspace. Egypt condemned the strikes on Arab states. Even Iran's foreign minister reportedly called his Iraqi counterpart to clarify that the strikes were not targeting the countries involved, but were limited to military sites, which is a pretty wild thing to say after you just set a residential tower on fire in Bahrain. U.S. military response, CENTCOM confirmed. 0 American combat casualties, 0 combat-related injuries, minimal damage to installations, operations unaffected. In other words, Iran fired at everything. This subject matter can be hard to digest, but for most Americans, their personal financial situation is the hardest subject to approach and manage. But with the DollarWise budgeting app, you can finally take control, and since there's a free trial, you can see for yourself, get a full picture, automate your budget, get powerful insights, and set real goals that change your life. Download DollarWise or go to dollarwise.com. Most of it was intercepted, and the countries Iran hit are now furious at Iran. Now here's the detail that tells you a lot about the state of Iran's so-called axis of resistance. Hezbollah, Iran's most powerful proxy, condemned the strikes and expressed solidarity, but it stopped short of pledging to attack Israel. That's a huge deal. After getting destroyed in the fall 2024 Israeli campaign that killed most of its leadership, Hezbollah is being very careful. Kataib, Hezbollah in Iraq threatened to attack U.S. bases, then promptly got its headquarters blown up in a drone strike southwest of Baghdad that killed 2 fighters. The Houthis in Yemen threatened to resume Red Sea attacks on U.S. and Israeli-flagged ships. So the pattern is lots of threatening, limited actual follow-through. Iran's proxy network that took 45 years to build has been systematically dismantled over the past 2 years. Hamas gutted in Gaza, Hezbollah decapitated in Lebanon, Assad gone in Syria. The axis of resistance is starting to look more like an axis of strongly worded statements. Let's talk about the thing that makes this conflict different from every other Middle Eastern war in recent memory: the Strait of Hormuz. If you've never heard of it, here's the short version. It's a narrow waterway between Iran and Oman, roughly 30 miles wide at its tightest point, and approximately 20 million barrels of oil passes through it every single day. That's about 20% of all the oil consumed on the planet. When the IRGC declared it not safe for passage, that wasn't just a military threat. That was a hand around the throat of the global economy. Oil tankers started making U-turns. At least 11 LNG tankers showed signs of decelerating, halting, or reversing course near the strait. Major trading firms suspended crude, fuel, and gas shipments. The UK maritime trade operations confirmed significant military activity in the area. Here's the math that keeps energy analysts up at night. Before the strikes, Brent crude was sitting around $72 a barrel. If the Strait disruption is short-lived, a few days, maybe a week, analysts expect prices to spike $80 to $91. Still painful, but manageable. And if Iran actually attempts a full blockade, $120 to $150 or higher. That's 2008 territory. That's global recession territory. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have bypass pipelines that can move about 2.6 million barrels per day around the Strait. That's nice, but it's a fraction of the 20 million that normally flow through. It's like losing a 6-lane highway and rerouting traffic through a bike path. One market analyst told CNBC, this has definitely bigger ramifications than Venezuela. Venezuela was only relevant for people who care about that particularly heavy crude. This affects everyone. Oh, and here's a detail buried in the reporting. In the 2 weeks before the strikes, between February 15th and 20th, Iran tripled its oil exports. They were selling as fast as they could, draining their storage, which means either they knew what was coming or they were preparing for a scenario where they wouldn't be able to sell for a while. To understand why American jets are bombing Iran today, you need to go back 73 years. And you need to start with the part that most Americans don't learn in school. In 1953, Iran had a democratically elected prime minister named Mohammad Mossadegh. He did something that the British found unacceptable. He nationalized Iran's oil industry, oil that was being extracted by the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, which you might know today as BP. The CIA and British MI6 organized a coup, Operation Ajax. They overthrew Mossadegh and reinstalled Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, a monarch who would be loyal to Western oil interests. This is the original sin. This is the thing Iranians bring up in every conversation about America, not because they're stuck in the past, but because the coup shaped everything that followed. The Shah got American weapons, American training, and an American nuclear reactor under the Atoms for Peace program. Yes, that's right, the United States actually helped Iran start its nuclear program. The Shah also got Sabak, a secret police force trained by the CIA, infamous for torture and disappearances. For 26 years, the Shah ruled with an iron fist and a gold-plated lifestyle. Iranians watched their resources flow west while their civil liberties evaporated. And in 1979, they'd had enough. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, exiled for 15 years, returned to Iran and led the Islamic Revolution. The Shah fled. Iran became a theocratic republic. Death to America became an official government slogan, not because Iranians woke up one morning feeling hostile, but because the 1953 coup was proof, in their eyes, that America would crush Iranian democracy the moment it threatened Western interests. Then students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. 52 Americans held hostage for 444 days. Nightly news coverage in the U.S. It destroyed Jimmy Carter's presidency. A rescue attempt called Operation Eagle Claw crashed in the desert, literally, killing 8 American servicemen. The hostage crisis created an unbridgeable psychological gap. For Americans, it was an act of barbarism. For Iranians, it was payback for 1953. Neither side has fully gotten over it. In 1980, Saddam Hussein invaded Iran, starting an 8-year war that killed somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million people. The United States, the same country that had just been humiliated by the hostage crisis, tilted toward Iraq. America provided Saddam with intelligence, satellite imagery, and dual-use technology. And when Saddam used the chemical weapons on Iranian soldiers and Kurdish civilians, the U.S. largely looked the other way. During the tanker war phase, both sides attacked shipping in the Gulf, damaging over 500 vessels. An Iranian mine nearly sank the USS Samuel B. Roberts. And on July 3, 1988, the United States shot down Iranian Air Flight 655, a civilian airliner, killing all 290 people on board, including 66 children. The U.S. called it a tragic accident. Iran called it a war crime. Washington never formally apologized. This is the context. This is what's in the room every time America and Iranian officials sit across a negotiating table. 73 years of coups, wars, sanctions, assassinations, proxy conflicts, and broken promises on both sides. In 2002, Iranian dissidents revealed secret nuclear facilities in Nantes and Arak. That kicked off over a decade of crisis. UN sanctions, EU sanctions, covert sabotage, most famously the Stuxnet virus, a joint US-Israeli cyber weapon that infiltrated Natanz computers via USB drive and secretly spun centrifuges to destruction while displaying normal readings to operators. It set the program back years without dropping a single bomb. It's one of the most remarkable covert operations in modern history. Iran also lost at least 5 nuclear scientists to assassination, most attributed to Israel's Mossad. One was killed by a controlled machine gun mounted on a pickup truck, another by a bomb attached to its car by a passing motorcyclist. In 2015, the Obama administration pulled off something that seemed impossible, a nuclear deal with Iran. The JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, limited Iran's enrichment to 3.67%, imposed intrusive inspections, and gave Iran sanctions relief. It was the closest the two countries had become to normalization in 36 years. In 2018, Donald Trump withdrew from the deal. Iran was in verified compliance at the time, but Trump called it the worst deal ever negotiated and reimposed maximum pressure sanctions. Iran's economy collapsed, oil exports plummeted, the rial cratered, inflation exploded, and Iran started enriching again, past the 3.67% limit, past 20%, all the way up to 60% near weapons grade. By early 2026, the IAEA estimated Iran had stockpiled over 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. That's enough for multiple nuclear weapons if enriched to 90%. On January 3, 2020, a U.S. drone strike killed Major General Qasem Soleimani, the head of the IRGC Quds Force, essentially Iran's shadow commander across the entire Middle East. He was arguably the second most powerful person in Iran. His killing was a massive escalation and a signal that the U.S. was willing to take shots the previous administration wouldn't. April 2024, Iran launched over 300 missiles and drones at Israel, Operation True Promise. Most were intercepted. October 2024, another 180 missiles, True Promise 2. Israel responded by destroying Iran's Russian-made S-300 air defense system, leaving the country essentially defenseless against future air campaigns. June 2025, the 12-day war. Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, hitting nuclear sites. Iran fired 500 ballistic missiles back, Operation True Promise 3, averaging 40 to 52 launches daily. The U.S. joined with Operation Midnight Hammer, specifically targeting nuclear infrastructure. A ceasefire was brokered on June 24th, but it didn't hold. It never does. This is the part that gets lost in the geopolitics, and it might be the most important part of the entire story. On December 28, 2025, something broke inside Iran. The rial, Iran's currency, had lost over 90% of its value since 2018. Inflation was running above 40%. The price of bread had tripled. Eggs had become a luxury. Young Iranians with college degrees were working 2 jobs and still couldn't afford rent. The median age in Iran is 35. This is a young, educated, connected population watching their futures dissolve. Protests erupted, first in a few cities over bread lines, then in dozens of cities, then over 100. The slogan started economic: we can't afford to live. They became political fast. Death to the dictator. Death to Khamenei. Neither Gaza nor Lebanon, my life for Iran. That last one is a direct rejection of the regime's entire foreign policy, spending billions on Hezbollah and Hamas while Iranians starve. It became the largest uprising since the 1979 revolution, bigger than the 2009 Green Movement, bigger than the 2022 Mahsa Amini protests. This time it wasn't just students and women, it was bazaar merchants shutting down their shops, workers striking, truck drivers blocking highways, Kurdish regions where security forces abandoned entire cities to protesters. And then came January 8th. Ayatollah Khamenei ordered the protests crushed by any means necessary. The IRGC and Basij paramilitaries opened fire on crowds with live ammunition. The death toll numbers varied widely depending on the source. Iran International, after a multi-stage investigation using hospital records and eyewitness accounts, estimated 12,000 killed in the January 8th and 9th massacres alone, largely by the IRGC and Basij. The New York Times confirmed Khamenei personally ordered live fire. The UN special reporter said the real number could exceed 20,000. News Nation sources put it closer to 30,000. Let that range sit with you for a second. Between 3,000 and 30,000 people, killed by their own government in about 2 weeks. An internet blackout covered it up. Over 24,000 people arrested. The regime announced it would charge protesters with Moraba, waging war against God, which carries the death penalty. Iranian families started turning funerals into celebrations, dancing, playing wedding music at burials as a form of defiance. In Lordegan, mourners chanted "Death to Khamenei" and raised the pre-1979 lion and sun flag of a young protester. A cultural analyst said, "If you, the Islamic regime, are telling me I need to cry at the deathbed of my child, I will laugh just to defy your existence." The Iranian diaspora held some of the largest protests in its history. Over 250,000 people rallied in Munich on February 14th, 350,000 each in Toronto and Los Angeles. In Westwood, LA, someone drove a U-Haul truck into a crowd of diaspora protesters, injuring at least 2. The truck carried a sign reading, "No Shah, no regime." On January 13th, Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, "Help is on the way." 10 days later, 2 carrier strike groups and 40,000 American troops were positioned around Iran. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent bragged about causing Iran's economic collapse at the Economic Club in New York. Their economy collapsed, he said, taking credit for the protests and the currency crisis. Whether that's legitimate pressure on a hostile regime or collective punishment of 93 million civilians depends entirely on where you sit. The politics of this war are unlike anything in modern American history. And I mean that literally. The coalition lines make no sense by traditional left-right standards. Imagine a horseshoe. The far left and the populist right are on the ends, bending toward each other, both opposing the war. The center left and the establishment right are at the top, mostly supporting it. That's the current political map. Senator Lindsey Graham. The end of the murderous Ayatollah's regime will soon be no more. Senator Tom Cotton. Iran has waged war against the U.S. for 47 years. The butcher's bill has finally come due. Speaker Mike Johnson praised Trump for trying peaceful resolution first. And in the most unexpected move of all, Senator John Fetterman, a Democrat, praised Trump directly. President Trump has been willing to do what's right and necessary to produce real peace in the region. God bless the United States, a great military, and Israel. Fetterman praising Trump on a military operation. If you want proof this conflict scrambles every normal political instinct, there it is. Now here's where it gets politically explosive. A significant chunk of Trump's own base turned on him. Tucker Carlson calls the strikes absolutely disgusting and evil. He'd personally gone to the White House on February 23rd to try to talk Trump out of it. He accused Fox News of driving the war and said the only reason it was happening is because Israel wants it. Marjorie Taylor Greene went further. We voted for America first and zero wars. This time feels like the gravest betrayal of it comes from the very individual and administration we believed would be different. She called it the end of MAGA. Nick Fuentes posted, Israel is dragging us to war. Joe Rogan captured the tension perfectly. The whole MAGA thing right now is very divided, particularly because one of the things they voted for was no war. Well, now it seems like we're in a war, and it's quick. We're 6 months in and that's already popped off. And then someone dug up Trump's old tweets. In 2012, now that Obama's poll numbers are in a tailspin, watch for him to launch a strike in Libya or Iran. In 2013, remember, I predicted a long time ago that President Obama will attack Iran because of his inability to negotiate properly. Those are circulating everywhere right now. AOC called it clearly grounds for impeachment. Bernie Sanders wrote in a Fox News op-ed that nobody seriously believes Iran is a military threat to the United States, and pointed out that Trump's own Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, had testified that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon.
Take a moment and get some free, easy money. With a Chime checking account and my link, you can get $350 when you set up direct deposit and pair that with a nation-leading high-yield savings rate. There's literally no reason not to sign up right now. Chime.com/Caleb or link in the description below.
Maryam Rajavi, leader of the opposition group MEK, announced the formation of a transitional government and rejected both the Islamic Republic and the monarchy. Inside Iran, it's complicated. There are genuine pro-regime rallies, people waving Khamenei's portrait, chanting against America and Israel. Shiite supporters in Iraq carried his picture through the streets of Baghdad. You can't pretend these people don't exist. Millions of Iranians support the Islamic Republic, either out of genuine belief or out of economic dependence on the regime's patronage networks. But there are also the videos of women dancing, of students chanting against clerical rule while bombs literally fall around them, of diaspora crowds, 350,000 in Toronto, 350,000 in LA, 250,000 in Munich, weeping, cheering, waving the old lion and sun flag. One diaspora Iranian told the Times of Israel, "War is no good, but I'm happy." That one sentence contains the entire tragedy of what it means to live under a regime so brutal that foreign bombs feel like hope. The international response broke along predictable lines, with a few surprises. Russia condemned the strikes, Pakistan condemned the strikes. No surprise there. Francis Macron said he hopes Iran will return to the negotiating table, which is either optimistic or delusional given the negotiating table was still warm when the bombs first hit. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, they were quietly normalizing relations with Israel. There are basically 3 paths forward from here, and none of them are clean. Path 1, contained air campaign, quick de-escalation. It's the optimistic scenario. Strikes continue for days. The Khamenei death, if confirmed, triggers a succession crisis that paralyzes the regime. Iran's retaliation fizzles out as stockpiles deplete and launchers get destroyed in real time. The Strait reopens. Oil settles between $80 and $90. Casualties stay limited. Both sides find an off-ramp. The problem, Trump explicitly called for regime change. Netanyahu said the campaign will last as long as needed until Iranians are free. You can't de-escalate from a regime change. That's not an off-ramp, it's a one-way road. Path 2, the uprising succeeds. This is what Washington is betting on. The strikes decapitate the leadership. The IRGC loses its command and control. The Iranian people, already pushed to the brink by massacre and starvation, rise up again while the security forces are in chaos. The regime crumbles. A transitional government forms. If Khamenei really is dead, this scenario just became more possible than it was 24 hours ago. The supreme leader was the gravitational center of the entire system. Without him, the IRGC, the judiciary, the clerical establishment, they all lose their anchor. But the Minab school bombing gives the regime a rallying cry. rally around the flag effects are real. Even when the flag belongs to a government you hate, foreign bombs have a way of uniting people. But here's what's clear from listening to Iranians, inside the country and across the diaspora. They want freedom. They want to choose their own government. They want to rejoin the world. They've been fighting for it with their bare hands against a regime armed with tanks and snipers and imported militias. And they've been paying for it in blood, not for months, but for decades. The question that will define this war isn't whether the Iranian regime is brutal. It is. It isn't whether Iranian nuclear ambitions are dangerous. They are. The question is whether the bombs dropped from 30,000 feet by countries the regime has spent 47 years teaching its population to hate can deliver freedom that 93 million people have been bleeding for on their own streets. History probably says not. But if Khamenei really is dead, if the man who ruled Iran with an iron fist for 35 years is gone, then history might be wrong. Again, you might already know, but we're about to find out.